Hello everybody and welcome back to Linda Tina TV. As you can see today, I am not alone. I have... Introduce yourself, girl.
Okay, I am G, and I have a YouTube channel as well, The G Life. So go ahead, subscribe to my channel.
On your screen,
yes.
You'll see the channel name.
Yes.
So as you have probably already seen from the title, we are going to be talking about being black in Italy. I have videos about being black in Italy, misconceptions and all that good stuff. I'll leave the links in the description box. But today we're going to talk about something that I think is very interesting. Being black in Italy, but now being black in Italy as an American.
I have the head wrap on.
I think I should have the head wrap on.
Maybe we should be switching because they're gonna be like, which one of you is from
Which
Africa?
one is from Africa?
Right.
Being black in Italy as an African, as you know, or if you don't already know, I'm from Uganda, East Africa, and she's from America.
Yep, I lived in Chicago.
Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I feel like we have different experiences being black in Italy,
yes,
as an American, as an African, and I thought we could just talk about that on here. So if that sounds interesting, you stay tuned. Okay, so G, as an American, do people usually tell from just looking at you that you're an American?
No.
No?
No. It's interesting because from the very first time I've come to Europe, Europeans have told me I don't look like a black American.
Because what does a black American look like?
That's what I always ask.
And
I do. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, oh, well, you know, your skin color and you're little and your eyes. And I'm like, but what does that have to do with being American or not,
exactly.
right? So I think there's like, you know, like that. Like I'm like, well, where do you think I'm from? They're like, oh, like maybe the West Indies or
really?
Yeah, Brazil is what I usually get.
Do you think like they have an idea of what a black American looks like in their minds?
I think they have an idea from TV,
which is Big Mama,
Baby Mama, a little ratchet. You know, like I think they're looking at like somebody who is a little, wilder, louder.
She's a very composed lady, by the way. She's just like, you know, well put together. No, that's her.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it, and I think it's stereotypes. You know, that they think is American, like somebody who's like, and you know, rolling their necks and doing.
So it's more of a character thing.
I think
when
it's
they
a character.
see your character, they don't think it's really. You think this is your
I
assumption.
assume that is what it is, and I think because I'm, you know, Americans they assume they're bigger.
Yeah.
You know, heavier.
And you're pretty petite.
Yeah, like so I think they see the fat American.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay. No, I get it. I get it.
So I think that's part of it. I think that's part of it.
Oh, interesting. And then when you speak, obviously.
When I speak, even, you know, when I speak Italian, they're like, okay, she's American, you know, just from the accent. So. And
when you actually tell them you're American, or when they find out you're American, how is the reception? Is the reception kind of like, woo, we got an American? It's more, yes, they're more accepting. And I think that also they're more accepting and they're more curious as to why I would leave the great country of America. Why would you live paradise?
Exactly. Why would you leave the place of wealth and fortune to come
because
to any
there's
place
that
else?
assumption as well that all Americans are rich and you know you live in the world of abundance.
Exactly. And I mean, to some extent, it is the world of abundance. Yeah. I do sometimes refer to Italy as the second world because
kind of is.
It's not convenient.
Yeah.
You know, like when you've been in the U.S. for a long time, it's very convenient.
Yeah.
There's lots of conveniences, and Italy does not have the same level.
Cut it.
Yeah, same level of convenience. There's more inconvenience than there is convenience for sure. Okay. So I think like people are like, well, why would you leave the great country of America to come to any place else in the world? So yeah. Interesting.
So I'll tell you my experience just to give you the idea of how different it is for an African living in Italy. So first of all, I feel like Italians don't differentiate between accents. If I speak, you can tell that I don't have an American accent.
Right.
Neither do I have a really British accent.
No.
Maybe my accent is somewhere in between there because I've lived in Italy for a while. But if you spoke with some Africans, you'll figure out that I'm probably from Africa. but they don't really know the difference between accents.
I would say they're probably used to more of a Nigerian accent.
Exactly.
And you don't have that.
Exactly. So they're used to exactly, or a Nigerian who's speaking Pidgin English. And in East Africa, we sound different from the people from the West African countries, also the Francophone countries.
Right.
So most times they'll assume I'm an American because I sound the way I sound, or they'll just assume I'm an American for some reason. And then when I tell them I'm African, they'll be like, oh. They have this sort of like disappointment. Oh, you're African. But then they also have this thing of, how are you African? And you look well put together. I'm not trying to say, I mean, I try to look well put together, but they expect an African in Italy to look a certain type of way, to be in distress, or to just be out there not doing anything with themselves, because that's the idea they have of African. I have a video on misconceptions, you can go and check that out. And most times they'll ask me, oh, so how did you come to Italy? I don't think Americans...
Like on a boat?
Do Americans get that question? No. Because if you're from America...
You flew.
You flew.
I didn't take a boat.
No, you didn't. But as an African, you most likely did. And you'll see that then, knowing that you're an African, you'll get a different reception. Because in Italy, I feel like being American is cool, even if you're black, because then being black in Italy is a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that is.
But okay, if you're black, at least you're American.
Exactly. So. And you know what, and I feel like this is not just in Italy, black Americans, and there's a whole Blaxit movement, right, from America to go any place else not America to try and find less racism. And there is less racism, I think, in Europe in general. But I do think, and I said this even when I was living in France, I think that white folks, white Europeans, are more accepting, open to black Americans because they're like, you've been colonized, you know how to behave. Versus Africans who don't, I mean, even though there was colonization in Africa, Africa is still Africa. It's mostly black, it's mostly, the culture is still very intact.
It's not as deep as
the United States, where, the black Americans there were taken away from their culture. Originally their ancestors were taken away from it, and so like they were bred in a different way. So I think to a certain extent, even if it's subconscious, there's a little more acceptance, and they're like, oh, you know how to deal with white people. You know how to behave in a white environment. Exactly.
But the African, what do you know? Actually, this is very interesting, because when my husband met me, he came back and told some of his friends or some people he knows. He comes from a very open-minded family, so it wasn't really his family, but people, acquaintances. And he would tell them, I met this girl, this African girl, and they had never met me. So the first time some of them met me, you could see the surprise on their face when they meet a girl who's, actually, I'm not carrying a basket on my head, I'm not wearing Afro print.
Sell books when you
I do wear Afro print sometimes, I'm proud of them, but I wasn't, like, he didn't introduce me and I'm like also Afro. They were like, oh, and how long have you been in Africa? Where else did you live? Nowhere. It's my first time in Europe. Oh, okay. But you can see that, like, they have this expectation of what an African woman should be like, sound like, and I feel they feel like sometimes you're too good to be an African, and some Africans have got that, have been told that.
Wow.
Oh wow, you're an African, you work and you have a decent job and you're dressed fine. Wow, I wouldn't tell you're an African. Yeah.
Okay, so this is a little anecdotal. When I first came to Italy, I was teaching English, right? Because I didn't know what I was going to do with myself here. And so I was teaching English, and I had this little student, and one day she just goes, "Where do you get your clothes?" And I was like, "Where do I get my clothes?" Right. I was like, why? I was like, where are you trying to ask me? Because like these little kids, like, they start these questions and you're like, where's the end point? Because we don't have time for this shit, right? So she goes,
let's get right to it.
Yeah, she goes, well, I see people who look like you, naked. And I was like, oh, like where? Where do you see people who look like me naked? And she goes, outside. I was like, on the street, girl. You see folks walking around the street naked. And she was like, I was like, what have your parents been saying? You know what I mean? Like, what have you seen maybe on TV or ideas or heard over conversation?
And that's where it starts.
And that's where it starts, exactly. And so I think, you know, there's that thing where little kids don't filter, right? And there's no differentiation from the fact that, okay, she's American and not African, you know, where her parents would see that difference.
Yeah. She's just a black person.
Exactly.
And black people.
Exactly, are naked. Running around the streets naked. Who'd you get your clothes from, girl, before you came over here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I know you wasn't wearing them before.
Yeah.
You got to the steps, you put on some clothes and came in the house, but like you was outside naked for sure, right?
Yeah.
So I think that there's definitely these preconceived notions, these concepts from a lot of Italians, because, and I want to say Italians probably more than some other Europeans who have more experience with people of color. Because here a lot of stuff is rooted in stereotypes, for sure.
Because they've not had close contact with people of color, so they're just gonna go with the stereotypes and what they've seen on TV probably.
Exactly.
And yeah, the preconceptions.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think from the Italians that I've spoken to, white Italians, they don't get how America is so racist.
Because they're thinking there's so many black people
Exactly. They're like, there's so many black people there.
Yeah.
This should just be commonplace.
Yeah.
They think it's a problem here because there's just not enough black people.
Right.
People aren't used to them. And then the idea of Africans arriving in, you know, some bizarre situation, they're escaping, you know, poverty or wars or whatever. There's no sympathy for that.
Yeah.
You know, so but when some of the violence, the police violence and things like that have happened, I've had people like, well, why are these things still happening?
Yeah.
You know, slavery's over.
It's hard for them to understand.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that Italians want to be open. They don't know how.
And in fact, when people ask me about racism in Italy, I feel like there is racism in Italy. I've mentioned that on my channel before. I've mentioned that I've not had any direct racism, but I've had the microaggressions like every day. But I feel like they're also more ignorant than even racist. Like they are just clueless.
Yes.
They are clueless.
And they don't want a clue. Like that's the thing. Like
they live in this bubble that they don't want to get out of, or maybe they want to get out of, but like you said, they don't even know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
They have no idea.
No, they don't. And I think that it's I think that's part of the frustration, right? It's like they want to have like certain conversations and certain things that they say and do, and you're like, what? You know, like, should I go in on you? Like, I don't even know.
I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know if I should educate you or insult you.
Right, exactly. So it's really an interesting, and I think when I tell people I'm American, they let a lot of guards down, you know?
Exactly. And when you tell them you're African, they get even more curious. So how did you come? How did you meet your husband? Do your kids ever go back to Africa? Have you ever taken your kids back home? There's so many questions which I realize are different from my black American friends. Like you say, the guard goes down, oh, she's American, so we're cool. I mean, she's not trouble.
No, she's not exactly. There's less trouble. I mean, I have had some people ask me, but where are you really from?
Tell me about that. So when you tell them you're American, they ask,
where are you really from? And then
America?
America. I'm like, well, but where are your people from? My people?
America.
Oh. So like your grandma, you know, they'll start like, and I'm like, yeah, all Americans, for sure.
Yeah.
Huh, okay. Do you ask white people that? Because white folks got the same hair, like
and they could also have very many generations from very many different places.
Exactly, exactly. Because there are no white Americans, Italians. There are no white Americans, Native Americans. White folks came from someplace else too. They came from someplace else too.
So asking an American that is actually a very bizarre question, because America is made of so many different people with so many different cultures and different origins.
Exactly. So I think that it's a very, like you were just saying, a lot of ignorance here, you know, and a lot of ideas that, okay, some people are black, but they weren't originated in America. Like they still have this idea that you can't originate there.
Yeah.
You know,
you must be from somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's very interesting, because knowing America, they should know better.
Yeah.
But actually, I'll bring also an Afro-Italian. Like Afro-Italians, I mean Black Italians who have been born and raised here.
Yeah,
because that's a whole other conversation.
I know, and I've been wanting to have a conversation with the Afro-Italian as well, because I did do like a little street interviews with
Guys,
different.
You really need to go and check out her channel to find all this content.
Yeah, I did some street interviews with some Black people, just kind of random. Like I just walked around and was like, hey, can I talk to you, you know? And I was hoping to bump into someone who was Afro-Italian, and I think the closest I came was someone who had been here, you know, since they were very, very young, and had the experience of growing up in Italian Italians kind of have like a systematic racism.
Yeah.
Not like in the US, but, and it's not towards, I can't say it's towards Black people, it's towards foreigners.
And even when it's towards Black people, it will be Africans.
Yes.
And then there's also classism, where it will also depend what your life situation is.
Yeah.
If you're an African who is, for example, I hate to say this, who is married to a white person, you may be put out of the other category, of like the other Africans who are just Africans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's very, there's a lot of classism, there's a lot of...
There is a lot of classism in Italy.
Yeah. Big, I mean, even our neighborhood, right? Like people assume something about how we live because we live in the neighborhood.
Which brings me to something I'd like to ask you. Do you feel like you get treated differently depending on, let's say, how you're wearing or where you are? Like if you're in a high-end restaurant or you're in a high-end shop, like what treatment do you get when you enter these high-end shops and they're seeing a Black girl, then after they'll see you're American, and then could you tell me something about that?
You know, it's definitely a thing where how you dress and are presenting yourself makes a huge difference in Italy. And you know, we can go to the park and there's like moms with heels and like, you know, I'm like, oh, did you just leave work? No, just came to the park with the kids, put on my stilettos, you know, like came here to pose. I'm like, okay. You know, that's great. The child's got his affinity scarf on.
We live in Milan, just so you know, maybe that makes a center of Milan.
So it's just like, you know, the kid's got on his Montclair, and you know, my kids are dirty. So I'm just trying to keep the snot off their face, you know, and so it's definitely a difference. I think, to look okay for the most part. I think my style is a little different than Italians are used to, you know, because I show up in, you know, like things from East India, things from my travels, you know, and people are like, what the hell is she doing? You know, like, why is she wearing these big, flowy, weird things? And so, that might also contribute to like, where the fuck is she from?
Where's she from?
Right, so I think it's definitely interesting when I go in the shops and people, normally they'll come over and they'll be like, what do you want? What do you need? You know, and like, and I'm American, so I'm used to like, are you about to follow me around the store? because we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
And so I'll turn around and I'll say something, and then when they hear my accent, they're like,
when they hear that you're American, they'll kind of let that guard down that you talked about.
Yes, exactly. They'll give me some space. But if I never say anything, because I will sometimes like walk in and people will be like, oh, how can I help you? Like, and just keep it moving. Like, just leave me alone. And then I do find that they're here when I'm here, and then they're here when I'm, you know what I mean? Versus
following you.
Exactly. Versus if I turn around and say, no, so, you know, and then they're like, oh, okay, she's got an accent that's not African, she's probably American. And they're like, do you want to speak in English? And I'm like, can you speak English? You know, like, do you have the skills? Most of them do not. So it's just like, it's very.
So you see, that's the difference.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna walk into a shop and I'll have that same reaction, and then I'll go ahead and be like, no, I'm just looking, and then they'll realize I'm African. I'll be like, okay, we got some work to do here, you know, and they'll kind of. And then my friend recently, just yesterday, told me she went to the counter. Is someone at my door? Just give me a minute. So my friend was telling me just a few days ago that she went to the counter at one of these basic shops, and the lady told her, oh, but those are not on sale. And she was like, okay. Yeah, so the ones on sale are on the other side. She was like,
I got what I wanted.
I know, this is what I want. Ah, okay, but these ones are gonna be like 3 times the ones that are on sale? And she was like, I know that, I saw the prices. But she was just trying to be like, black girl, maybe you were looking for the things on sale because as a black girl, maybe financially, you know, so there's always that struggle related to the African person. And then also this thing about the African women, which I've mentioned in my videos before as well. I've had men following me around like every single day. Do you get that as well? And then they'll hood and, you know, hoping that you'll jump into the car, or they'll ask you for the price for, you know.
I've had men pull over and get out of their cars.
Get out? Like,
like I was, I've had them pull over to get out of their cars and try and talk to me. I've had them try to, when I was pregnant.
I've had men try to do that when I'm pregnant with a stroller.
And I made a joke to someone. I made a joke to someone before, and I was just like, I was with the 2 kids, and this man stops me and was like, do you need some help? And I was like, what kind of help? Like, what are you offering?
Oh my
you know, and I was just kind of like, what? And I was like, is this how you get an assistant? You know, like, I'm like, what are you offering?
And that won't happen to a white woman, obviously.
No. And I mean, I've been catcalled here for sure. But I was actually with my father-in-law once, and I was standing apart from him, and this man pulled over. So the man pulls over near our house. He pulled over, and he got out and he started saying something, and I can only listen to one Italian person speak at a time. So like, you know, my father-in-law was saying something, and this man said, and I was like, and then my father-in-law saw him and was like, what do you want? And the dude was like, oh, and he got back in his car and left.
You realize? No, they do that. Because in their minds, African black women are prostitutes. They say the first black women that they saw here, which is very recently, just a decade or 2 ago, did a lot of prostitution, and so it's the common assumption.
But you know what? Come on now. There's a lot of prostitution in Italy. There's a whole movement with the housewives, where their husbands are away prostituting themselves, Italian women prostituting themselves. So that's some, you know.
I know. You look at them and you're like,
exactly, come on.
Really? Anyway, guys, we don't want to make this video so long, but we're going to be having a series of these conversations. Please go and follow G on her channel. The link is down there. The name of the channel is here. The link is in the description box, because we feel like there are many of these conversations that would be very interesting from us as black women living in Italy, but as an American, as an African, but also as women in mixed.
Yes, and we just did a conversation that's going to be on my channel about mixed ethnicity children, interracial families, perspectives from Africa versus America.
Yeah. So we're going to be having many of these conversations. If you enjoy these conversations, I would like to know so that we can make more of them.
Yes.
We'll bring more people, more women of color to the channel, and we can make a sort of series or something about this, because first, these are conversations that are very close to our hearts. We're always talking about these things without filming them. So we thought that let's film this also to see what other people have to say, what they think, their experiences. So it's nice to have a friend we can have these conversations with respectfully. We don't always agree on everything, but we learn and unlearn things from each other. So it's nice to have you on the channel, G.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And remember to subscribe, guys. See you in my next one. And let us know what you think.
Yeah, leave her comments. And follow her on Instagram.
Oh, on Instagram as well. Yeah. We'll leave our Instagram links all in the description box. Thank you so much for being here, and see you next time. Bye-bye.